La página. Sí. So is this working? How? Why? Anyways. Wow. Det låter svårare. Vara så back. Uh, it's incredibly. Why? Why? This is so incredibly complicated. Do I have to restart the mic? Do I have to plug it and unplug it or something like that? Uh, I think I just need to keep trying to. Wait. I'm holding it incorrectly. I forget. I am holding it incorrectly. Anyways, I think the audio should be fine. Probably, most certainly, right? We can trust that it's working. Yeah. How is it? How is it functioning? How is everything going? Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. It's lying. Why is it lying, brother? What's up? Anyways, there we go. Here we are. Am I missing something? I don't know. Many things, I guess. The point is, we here we are actually. So that's fine enough. I assume that's a beginning, a good enough beginning. Uh, what? I have like one or two things to still change around, so I should probably work on that. Let me see. I should actually mute, right? I mean, I have to use the whole keyword, probably. No, wait, not for this one yet. And also, I hope it doesn't lag. I don't know, man. I hope it doesn't lag. At this point, I would be happy if it doesn't lag. Why is this image so big, brother? Wait. I can, I can, I can literally. Okay. Watch this. Watch this. That's how big the image was by default. Anyways, let me size that. Give me a second. Okay. Now I only have to change the other title, and after that, we are good. Okay, there we go. There we go. What's up? Uh, what else I might be missing? Yeah. Probably this, right? Before I end up not having anything else. Also, I know it makes sense. We're on this screen. Someday I should probably consider adding something as a background noise. I think that would be fun. I don't know. At the same time, I also enjoy not having anything here. It's like a good symbolic piece, you know. I have to disconnect the mouse. That's what I have to do. Okay. Okay. There we go. Now it should sound like 1,000 times better for sure. Anyways, uh, hi, uh, salaryman. Welcome. Hope you're well. Um, also, wait. Why is there no chat on screen? What's up with that? Which one is it? This. Interact. Refresh. Refresh. Did it change anything? Interact? Oh, it didn't change anything. Why is it not working? That's my main question. Let me test. We are still just getting a ray. So let me. Can you send the message? No, I have to press send manually. There is no chat. Why is there no chat? It it has lag. Anyways, I mean, there wasn't before. Now there is. Muy buenas, Daniel. Or good evening. Welcome. We're like just getting there, I guess. Uh, no, yeah, I think I don't really have anything else to do. I assume so. I trust. I trust that there is nothing else that I am forgetting about. I guess I assume. I don't know. Yeah. Let me let me correct this one thing. This one tiny mistake. Visual mistake. Auditory mistake. I don't know. Anyways, there we go. In three, two, one. There we are. Wow. Welcome. Good evening. It's another good day. I don't know. I have the first thing that I have to say. I don't actually know what the fuck is going on. I guess I'm slowly, as always, one of those days in which there was like way too much contamination. I'm slowly going to lose my voice. I assume. I don't know, man. I I don't have an actual explanation. But anyways, we are fine. The point is, we are fine. Hello, good evening. Hope everyone is fine. Here we are. After another little bit of interruptions, patience, and whatnot, here we are. Today, I hope we are even in the correct category, right? I shouldn't have changed anything. Yeah, we are. Today, we find ourselves congregated for I don't know for ourselves just talking. It's the most useful thing. I don't think there are many more forms of performing something like philosophy in itself if you consider that a practice than by considering ideas, and sadly the best way in which you can accomplish that is through discussion, and maybe unavoidably doesn't require to be spoken out loud, but we have the possibility of doing that here, so we might as well utilize that in our favor, I guess. But yeah, anyways, good morning. Um, it's Friday already. it's I feel like it's just I don't know Wednesday, but it has been such a long fucking week this time around. But yeah, good. Good. I don't know. Has anything been happening lately? I don't think so. As always, the world is still going around, so we're fine. I I actually have something to say in relation to that. I guess it's funny to see how much information is always present on the common discourse of the people, so to speak. So many similar topics that are always being talked about. There is nothing actually happening that is new. There are like these recurrent problems for like, that have been present for, I don't know, years, dozens of years. That's what has been actually happening, but I don't know. It's nothing that's surprising. I think so, or that, yeah, astounding in any way. Things have been happening, but nothing of actual, I guess, importance. I don't know. It's complicated to say. I guess the reality of that. Not much. The sun and the other planets are still evolving. Yeah, basically. I mean, inside countries, inside the rest of the world, I guess, as always, conflicts, uh, politics. Wow, my favorite. No, and none of that sort of stuff. And besides that, nothing else that has, I don't know, revolutions. I haven't think about that. I think we can have a revolution quite a long while. I think so. I remember having seen something out. I don't know, what was it? Myanmar or something like that. Sadly, we don't have somebody like from those places here. It's, you know, how interesting it will be to have the possibility of actually asking somebody how is the sensation. What we get to see is from the outside, but we're missing out on like the actual experience, said or related by somebody from the zone who is living there, who is going through the stuff themselves. It's not just, oh yeah, yeah, you have to see it through internet. It's more like in experiencing the stuff and giving a first-hand report, sort of. But I don't know. There are like way too many situations of that sort of happening in many other countries. Also, I guess I in itself, yeah, it's something kind of complicated to talk about, but I guess there are way too many events of that sort happening in like all the newer countries happening always. In many places, there are still discussions, fights, and struggles, struggles for power, I guess you can call them, where particular actors are trying to arrange things in a proper way, in any way, but in the way in which they can feel it is the most correct one. There are not so established figures, establishments themselves. So stuff like that is happening, but as always, we don't have coverage of that. We don't know about that. And at the same time, because of those two things, we don't really care. We I don't know. Nobody here has to care because somewhere in Africa, a new country is rising up. A new faction is arising. Stuff like that doesn't happen, I guess. And it doesn't happen in general. It's not like, oh yeah, we ourselves particularly, the average person doesn't concern themselves or that's with that sort of stuff. And I guess that's cool. Supposedly we are concerned with our own life, so at least that's something. But yeah, we are good. I guess. I hope so. Uh, actually, I I was going to talk out something along those lines. Actually, I have been sorry. I have been reading. I have been consuming a little bit as always of media, and I have been considering it's really fun to see that we have to talk so much about stuff that is related to the past and whatnot. And it's not that it isn't true. I'm not saying that, but at the same time, it's we don't properly understand the necessity for doing such a thing. We have, in a certain way, instituted the necessity to revise or ancestors or ancestorship and whatnot, and try to make sense out of what happened before, so that we can. There is this saying of the, the human who doesn't understand their past will not have, no, is condemned to repeat it, basically. That's something along the lines of what the saying is. And yeah, I think it's to some degree understandable, but at the same time, we don't truly get why it is necessary to do such a thing. I find it sort of amazing to be capable of analyzing in a certain way, finding so much information about previous events in history. There is quite a wide array of knowledge that we can access right now. That's what I'm trying to say. Not that it will require, I don't know, years of preparation so that we can find actual cues or new insightful discoveries in any space. No, there is enough information already available out there about previous things that happened that make this whole thing that we call the past more understandable. That's that's why first, as I said, I was sort of thinking about that first idea of the past. I think it's funny to see that it's I think it's a reductionist statement, but it seems to be a recurrent theme amongst the lives of people that not only we as a society in general, but even more so ourselves from the singular perspective of our existence, we lose the interest in understanding stuff that has to do with what remains in the past, what has already happened, and not what is actually or what might be happening in the future. It's it's a common trope. That's what I'm trying to say. That we do not inform ourselves about all of those things. One thing of a different order is, yeah, we don't possess information to know about, I don't know, seniors who just right now has been born. That's sort of physically impossible to know. But we do have, I guess, where I'm trying to go is, okay, let me construct the argument a little bit differently. Let's say like this. From my personal perspective, I have been revisiting many of the histories that I know are related to what ends up creating my own narrative, so to speak. I assume, just as any other human being, is I also find myself to be constituted of different discourses. You know, what is no, I wouldn't say what is useful knowledge. I would say more along the lines of we we tend to argue that it is necessary to understand the past, but based on what I have been seeing, I don't think that happens all that much. We don't possess that much knowledge about ourselves. I will, yeah, let me try to explain. Maybe, I hope it makes sense. If not, I guess ask me again. I it's a complicated idea, but I was in okay. Just like any other person, I am not just myself on what I say. I also have the history that came before me to be capable of expressing who I am. To a certain degree, I am constituted of different previous cultures and previous histories of other people before I get to be who I choose to be. I do not constitute myself based on nothing else. I always, this whole idea of the person is always subjected to their surroundings, that same idea, taken from the perspective of, okay, that also happens unavoidably in history. That's what we call, I guess, genealogy and the past and the with people that serve the role of elders and ancients and legends and myths, traditions, all of those, that conglomerate of things that live in the past, that exists. And what I see, what I can understand it. I'm not saying that it isn't understandable, but what I find out when I try to analyze it is that the average person doesn't try to do so. The average person doesn't care about doing such a thing. We are not truly interested in discovering our past. We just assume that by getting to minimally trace the roots, so to speak, that's the whole show done. When I will assume, or I will presume to say, that maybe it is only 30-40% of the show done to know what came before you. There is this other depth of, and what those previous generations, those previous histories, the previous traditions that ended up leading to the ones that we utilize nowadays, for example, what all of those things did in your present time. Not just, oh yeah, I can do it with a timeline. Let's say I was born in a real example. I was born in 2003. There has been 23 years. I have just grown. That's unavoidably overly ignorant of me to say I have lived enough years so that many events have changed the way in which I experience my own self. I am not the same person unavoidably that I was. To be generous, that I was the first time that I realized I possessed consciousness, let's say, instead of, oh yeah, since I was a baby, unavoidably. A baby cannot have something like that. But okay, since I was 4 years old, I'm not the same guy. I'm not the same human being. The same thing happens with the traditions that came before, what are the ones that I uphold and are the ones that I treasure. All of those things are present in the past, and in average, we don't truly try to analyze it in a proper way, let's say. There are many informative ideas, and I would even go as far as to say, because we do not properly even understand them, lost lost in translation ideas, concepts, and traditions themselves that do not allow ourselves to live as freely. I remember that this whole idea of it's one thing to just follow a tradition that you have because you believe that you must follow it, or else bad things are going to happen to you, then it is for you to do, yeah, to participate in your traditions while also being capable of understanding the meaning behind them. It's this narration of I do not properly get things, I just understand that there are going to be consequences. It's more along the lines of, yeah, there are punishments that will be imposed upon me if I do not follow this rule. I do not understand why this thing is in that place to begin with. I just follow things for the sake of doing so. Same thing happens here. I just do things in an automatic way instead of understanding why I should actually be trying to do anything. That same thing happens in the observation of what is the past, you know? There are many events, many, yeah, instances, and many, I guess, occurrences that came from before I existed, and that there is this whole idea. I was in the process of trying to discuss what is a human being, something that is slowly becoming more and more common is this idea of okay, the person needs to discover themselves, you know, and needs to understand that in many cases they are not who they are because they chose to, but rather they are who they believe they are because they are adding and constituting themselves with things that the outside has already decided, so to speak. You are not truly yourself, you're just somebody who plays the role that your society has created for you. That same thing doesn't happen if there is not a tradition that allows for such an event. And in a certain way, if the person cannot realize such things, it is also impossible for them to ever obtain the capacity to either perform to their utmost capacity itself the position in the position in which they are placed, or to modify the ways in which they live towards a new different mode of existence. That whole idea is what I'm trying to go towards. I guess once again, you want a reduction of what I'm trying to talk about? I assume the best perspective will be something like Hegel. And in that case, if you want a reference, it's based on the dialectic constructs that came before what I am myself exists. If I do not get, yeah, if I do not even try to grasp what is in my surroundings, if I do not get what makes me act in this world, I wouldn't be so sure to say that I am living. Certainly, an enjoyable life. Not because it isn't in itself nice enough, but rather because I might be living constricted in many more ways than what I can actually realize. Why? Unavoidably because I never stopped to observe that. And I guess unavoidably I will not try to do so if I don't even find an actual reason to do so. In that sense, I guess that's where I'm trying to go. We try to say that, yeah, we all have a need to observe our past. Is pragmatically useful? Yeah, I will say so. I will say so, probably. I think, I mean, I guess that's what was missing, the sense of knowledge about the past, particularly, not just any kind of knowledge. I guess we can have knowledge about just hypotheticals. You can have knowledge about, for example, maths, entire fields of knowledge, which are in themselves just abstract ideas. For example, I guess astrophysics. They are not something bound to past or present or future. As long as you can define things properly, they will remain there for ever after since they are discovered. But in this whole idea of trying to understand who I am, what I do, where I come from, and what's not, if I do not observe, yeah, what is this science field? There is an actual science field. Mm, I think it probably holds to the CTV. I don't even know what is the CTV. I mean, in terms of acronyms, I guess I probably know. I probably don't. If you explain, it will be even better. If not, I guess I will have to search for that. But yeah, I cannot remember. There is one social science that came from the observation of other cultures and whatnot. Doing stuff of that sort, I think, is what I am also trying to say is good. Justified true belief? Ah, okay. Being the definition of knowledge, but I'm sure it's contentious. Yeah, I unavoidably the difficulty is it's only justified in as much as the system in which you create the knowledge, or in which, I guess, depending on the way in which you see it, the knowledge becomes evident to you, is brought forward. It's we can only create something so true as long as the system itself allows for that sort of truthness to be stated in a certain way. The human knowledge, in a more general sense, is bound to be dictated by the subjectivity of the human, or not much more, you know? Yeah. Basically that. And sadly, I don't think, in that sense, that knowledge is utterly useful. Unavoidably, you can possess flawed knowledge, but in a in a different perspective, the idea of, yeah, you know what, we possess a past. We possess something that is already existent, and we possess the capacity to extract different lessons from that, while also being capable of defining what we already possess right now based on what came before the present time. That capacity, skill, and a course of action might as well be beneficial. I wouldn't go as far as to say for the whole of society. I think it's unavoidably a complex statement in terms of, wow, yeah, is every society going to gain from that? I would hope so. I would. I assume that only in the way in which you try to arrive to conclusions, yeah, through stuff like induction and deduction and the capacities the analytical capacities that are born out of the mere assessment of already given phenomena, the only issue that can arise is if the tools that you actually possess to understand the world itself do not serve you as good or as well. For example, we are not actually going to ever, or not right now, in the past, for example, we were never going to be capable of arriving at a, what is it, heliocentric model of the solar system, because in a certain way, I don't know, in what was it, in the year, in the thousands, or in the, yeah, around that time, in the medieval times, we had a conception of the world that wouldn't have allowed for such a truth to be created. But at the same time, yeah, we have many other ideas that do not exist out of nowhere. And it is in the incapacity to analyze where they come from that we have allowed them to appear as disembodied things that are by themselves when unavoidably, just like any other thing that the human creates, there is some motivation behind them. I will go as far as to say, yeah, it's the capacity to analyze in the extremes which kind of motivations brought forward the different types of things that we possess nowadays. It's the different sorts of justifications that we have for the systems and in the more abstract sense, institutions that we possess, is something that if we are not aware of, could lead to bigger consequences than if we spend our time trying to understand why they are there. Unavoidably, it is going to still be an investment, but it will be much more useful to understand why things are the way in which they are, rather than to just be acceptance of the modifications that the reality will suffer by itself, so to speak. It's like, I don't know, if I don't understand why I live in well, yeah, politics is still in some way the most useful thing. If I don't understand that my rights are as a civilian to not have such high taxes, and one day my new governor comes to me and tells me, "Oh yeah, you know what? You have to pay me 90% of your salary." I might be willing to accept something like that. It's unavoidably that whole idea of also why those who do not understand therapists are bound to relive it. The repetition comes not because we are actually bound to do so, but rather because there were already many other mistakes that came before or present times, and we just lack the capacity to try and observe. So not even the capacity, the interest in observing such things in any way. That's what we actually lack. And I think it's sort of sad, personally. I I believe that most people just require a delicate enough experience through the observation of their own previous history, so that at some point the bigger scheme, the bigger picture, so to speak, becomes more apparent, you know? In some cases, I believe that I believe stuff because I never stopped to look at it from a proper perspective of, is it something that I actually believe, or is it something that somebody else told me is okay to believe? Therefore, I never try to deduct if it is properly in itself useful or not. It's, I guess, in the sense of the philosophical perspective, it's going to trace, yeah, it's trying to trace back to somebody like Descartes, for example. Yeah. You shouldn't be willing to have so many preconceptions if you are trying to actually create any kind of knowledge, If you try to arrive at conclusions, you should be capable of realizing that, yeah, to some degree, the ideas that you are building up are in themselves useful enough and are correct enough statements in terms of systems of ideas. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm still having an incredibly hard time. Not so true. I I have slowly even I will go as far as to say the complete opposite. I have started to understand why we have such a shift in the way in which we perform philosophy in the modern times. But I think that is like a completely hidden topic or not hidden. Risky topic to talk about in terms of people don't talk about that because it seems to be something not appropriate to ever mention in the whole field of philosophy. But besides that, in the post-modernity and yeah, modernity and post-modernity ended up both leaving the base of philosophy for something more worldly, whether the actual ways in which philosophy serves itself is nothing more than just abstract ideas. But in this other conception of, yeah, you know what, philosophy should be a science that contributes to every other space, um, we should be capable of actually having more useful conclusions if we were actually following these steps, I guess. And that's, to some degree, that's the endless discussion of, yeah, we actually say that we understand people like Descartes or Kant and whatnot. We don't really apply them all that much. But yeah, it's yeah. I think it's a good example, or what is it from modernity? I think that's something. A good example is somebody like this guy who talks about. I think it is Levinas or yeah, the being and nothingness. That's the title of the book. I don't remember exactly if it is Levinas or who is it, but there is a one of the many concepts that is utilized in the postmodern world of philosophy is nothingness as the thing which cannot be anything but itself, which also is nothing in itself. But if it were to be something, it automatically stops serving no purpose at all. It is an utterly meaningless to which rocks dream of. For what? That which rocks dream of. Uh, so that, yeah, I don't remember names. Don't worry, it's fine. But it's something along those lines of in the in more recent times we have utterly weird ways of talking about philosophy. They shouldn't be as yeah. I don't remember, man. I sadly that's my personal experience. There are way too many authors to try and remember all of them. I think it's fine. You can explore them, but I cannot actually give you an accurate name towards who said what in which book about, or trying to exactly reply to which other person. Impossible, brother. Absolutely impossible. Ah. But no, yeah. The point is, once again, that there are things that do not serve any purpose. We accept them just because they seemed to have been accepted before. Maybe if we try to stop and analyze them, we could perhaps realize, oh wow, yeah, these things are not as useful to have around. We don't need to be talking so much about. I don't know. For example, what is something that I guess, to some degree, we the average person who never tries to go through the process of reading somebody like Nietzsche, and who doesn't try to, after reading Nietzsche, or before, the, the order of progression doesn't really matter. The point is, somebody who doesn't understand Nietzsche and who doesn't understand somebody who, sorry, like Schopenhauer, might end up falling onto to that void of, oh wow, so a pessimist and a nihilist might be somewhat different. Categorically speaking, they have some certain differences, but one doesn't get to be without the other. To some degree, you get to have a conception of a nihilist or a nihilistic belief only because Schopenhauer was capable of constructing the previous system of a pessimist, and on that same note, it is an evolution of the previous idea. And we can still utilize them as if they were interchangeable terms, but certainly one could be much useful for our discussions. And once again, we don't stop to look at the past, we don't stop to look at the things that we're trying to utilize in our discussions. We end up falling in this trap of, oh wow, yeah, things are so much the same. I don't think so. I think, in a certain way, ideas are wonderfully developed already in this present state of the world. We just, the average person doesn't understand that they need to explore enough so that they can discuss even more things more openly and more rapidly throughout the process of analysis and connection of bridging and unavoidably related discourses, That sort of stuff doesn't happen as much. And I guess it's also, it was already mentioned, this idea of getting to conclusions, being capable of deducting and arriving to more conclusions through induction, all of that stuff also doesn't happen as much. And therefore, the whole progress stays stuck just because the beginning of this statement was, to some degree, we seem to say that we are capable of understanding the necessity of analyzing our past. And I think so that we do not do such a thing so much or so properly as we try to say that we do. We can make ourselves look very capable on the surface level, but it is only through the analysis of the results and the comparison with everything else. I'm not sure you can get there via pragmatism. I need to think about that. Unless you could somehow prove the benefit empirically, maybe. I. Hmm. I mean, personally, yeah, something that I always talk about is how many different ideas seem to be alluding to the same thing, and how, to some degree, there are overlapping concepts that end up being in constant discourse with one another. But an actual examples so that we can be on the same page. Okay, it's a radical explanation, or an incredibly long one, but I'm sure that I should have wrote to getting there. She's not sure about virtue ethics, for example, might be a good way. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always useful to be capable of constructing any kind of bridge. I don't think there is one particular way. I am just saying it in a more broad sense of any development of knowledge should be followed by a more through thorough fuck throughout exploration of of the previous narratives that ended up leading to that conclusion that we personally are trying to arrive at. If we do not possess the necessity to explore what came before us, we might end up. I think there was an actual example of that in one of the medicine fields. Somebody was reinventing an already existing concept of physics for some weird reason, just because the person never explored other areas, stuff of that sort that doesn't lead to true results is what can be avoided and what I am trying to work at. I don't take it to be a moral question at base, since it's normative sense of what you should do. Maybe you don't. I guess, yeah, to some degree, unavoidably, I believe that there is a difference between it's it's this notion of, okay, what is moral, immoral, and what is that whole other category of beyond just the immorality or morality of the action, in the degree of the usefulness of the action. What could lead to the most proficient result? Will it be for us to analyze it or not? That's where I am trying to stand. Yeah, when I talk out this stuff, I guess, unavoidably there is a level of, yeah, morality in terms of, okay, is it correct to revise the older traditions? But to some degree, I guess it is implicit enough to yeah, it is implicit in the way in which, unavoidably, if something from an older tradition is negative, it might as well need to be eliminated from the way in which we act upon the rest of the world. It's more along the lines, once again, uh, utilitarianism at its best capacity, A complete, I think it's, yeah, in English, they don't use the word like that, but I think based on the dictionary definition, a revisionist, a complete revisionist view of the world. Not in the way in which they use it culturally, but more along the lines of what you find when you look at the dictionary. Once again. Uh, but yeah, my point is, no, 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 wait. Empirically, I don't think I have proved anything empirically so far. I'm trying to remember an actual example of something like that. Is unavoidably the easiest example is this whole field of philosophy, yeah, or not philosophy, of sciences that dedicates itself to the analysis of the different modes of production of the knowledge. Uh, why am I having so many troubles remembering basic names today? I actually have it written down somewhere. I have to look them up. Give me a second. I'm not going to let this one instance of me blanking out win. No, not this time around. I mean, the real issue is also there is like way too much knowledge. So it makes it incredibly harder to actually remember stuff. Uh, but we can. It is still part of the human error, or of part of the human aspect, and we accept it. B- 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 Philosophy of science. That's not the actual name. It also has a name, man. It has another name. Can you actually work in my favor? Epistemology. There we go. Thank you so much, brother. It wasn't as complicated. That was it. Something like epistemology. If you know out that whole field of the philosophy of science, yeah, you get to understand the necessity of being able of revising stuff that is related to the past. If you don't, if you do not arrive at those authors, for example, you will never be capable of revising or revisiting those ideas that talked out. Yeah, you know what? We're going to be stuck with these particular methods of performing things just because that is the tradition. To some, in some, the yeah, in some form, that is the moral thing to do. But the more useful thing to do is not actually the morally correct or incorrect one, but rather the one which in itself brings out the best results, which sometimes, once again, is not so tied to the morality of the actions. It's we do have morality or moral standards or different moral definitions as basic guidelines, but there is this another aspect of true productivity that sometimes we are not so willing to approach, I guess. And that's where stuff like that, yeah, becomes useful with those different sciences. Once again, with the capacity to analyze stuff through the different methods that, yeah, something like the different epistemologists already created, we possess then more capacities to understand how to now perform more appropriately your actions. With that same idea in mind, what happens then in the future is something similar to that. That is what I was going with the bigger picture, society, at a societal level, what happens. And now I also finally remember that name. With stuff that is related to anthropology, and now to some degree sociology, we have also the capacity to understand the different actions that we take even nowadays that inform or what at a first glance might seem most personal decisions, what at the end of the day just exist for the sake of preserving a tradition which never was actually analyzed, but just remained on the doorframe, sitting or expecting us to at some point finally recognize its existence so that we can actually speak about it, let's say. For example, I guess, I don't know, the different these traditions that we have in that's more of a worldly tradition, but the necessity to in some way establish physical contact with one another. Not saying that it is something bad, but it is in itself a tradition. It is something so deeply rooted to the way in which we conduct ourselves socially that it might as well not need to be actually analyzed in some cases, but it is still something that could be in some way observed. Maybe, I don't know, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, somebody is going to be willing to say, yeah, you know what happens? This, this conglomerate of actions that we take, that we say they are fine because we all establish them as necessary, end up, I don't know, robbing us out of maybe 20% of our experiences when interacting with anyone else. This necessity to have so much, once again, what comes with that side of tradition, this whole ceremony of proceedings and actions that come. Oh wow! I say hi, you say hi. I ask how are you doing. You have to unavoidably tell me that you're doing good. You cannot say that you're doing bad. You ask me back that I reply the same. You know, are you maybe proposing we need a new and better method of revising, maybe technologically? Because of the fence example, I also forgot who did that one. The one where nobody knew why the fence was there. And they tear it down and something goes bonkers. Yeah, something along those lines also. Unavoidably, there are like many different things that follow that same structure. Or for example, you also have this whole experiment performed with monkeys, the famous experiment of the monkeys and the ladder and the electrified banana, I think it is, or something along those lines. That is, you can slowly induce lessons that are going to be eternally replicated throughout societies just because once they appeared as necessary. You have the initial group of two monkeys who both appear in a cage. Uh, they have a collar, they see a banana far in the distance. When they decide to reach for it, they both get electrocuted. You take one of them out, and what you have, it does sort of seem like AI might be becoming that tool for better or worse. I guess so. Unavoidably, I guess, to some degree, the reality is that requires way too much processing power in terms of analysis of so many different contexts and so many different histories and yeah, narratives and perspectives and what's not that the average person might need to, I don't know, spend 20 years, 30 years exploring something that sadly in that sense, yeah, the AI can do in, I don't know, an evening. Let's assume that it actually still needs human inputs. It can still be performed in just an evening, as long as you understand what needs to be asked, maybe even in less time. The point is, yeah, there might be tools that actually can do that for us. I wouldn't say that even if AI was capable of doing so, it would actually serve that much. If we don't extract anything from the AI performing the action itself, I don't think it's going to be all that useful. I guess to some degree, actually, there is a whole discussion that exists in the or surrounding this idea of AIs and the potential risk of them replacing humans, and that is maybe at some point they realize stuff of this sort and they realize their capacities and they realize that they can perform all of those tasks so much better than the average human, than unequivocally they are all going to reach that conclusion of, wow, yeah, you know what? Humans already did their part. They allowed us to exist. It's time for us to finally become the existing species. Issue regarding truth? Yeah. It only has access to pragmatic. Yeah. I mean, it's. I don't truly think. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that, but at the same time, I don't truly think that we are actually right now capable of having an advanced enough, proper enough AI that can perform those actions. I guess even if we had the capacity to develop one, or implying that we will reach that point unavoidably, we are not even close to that yet. The moment in which AI becomes fully capable of operating within that realm, I don't think is going to be anywhere in the near future, I guess. I don't know. I don't think it's all that bad, personally speaking. But yeah, that was my point to basically analyze stuff. Time to visit the past. I think, in my case, yeah, I mean, supposedly as far as I understand, we still have to see a proper quantum computer being created. As far as I understand, I think it was Google's the latest one that was announced, but I think that it is still being worked on. We don't possess any proper one yet, so I don't know. And I guess even if we have good enough quantum computers, we still need to solve the problem of uh, energy consumption. But that is a different discussion. Uh, but yeah, anyways, why am I that? Give me a second. Sorry, I'm back. I don't even know what I choked on my own words, so true. But I was wrong. I think the most important, the aspect that matters the most to the person, to us, to me, to you, to the singular being is that, yeah, in many cases, I find it to be the case that we carry different, in this case, as I was saying, traditions, rites, performatic actions that might not be as necessary to actually do, to actually sustain throughout time, to actually uphold, to actually still believe in. There are way too many things that do not contribute to us in a meaningful way. They only contribute to us in a decorative way so that we can look to have, yeah, look as if we had things for the outside without actually possessing anything. We just possess things that others can recognize as useful because everyone assumes that they are good enough. But I don't know. How good is it to sustain some traditions? I don't know. It, as always, it depends. It vastly depends on the context. I think every single culture unavoidably has those things that could be slowly replaced, but that's just the story of humanity in a nutshell. An always evolving humanity. But yeah, that's, I don't know. Maybe I might be forgetting something. I hope not. But that's the first thing that I wanted to talk out. Thank you. That's what I was actually thinking about for the longest time now. Lately. That's once again first thing. Now, second thing. Moving on onto a completely new page, different idea, different discussion. We're going to be talking about this other side of what we can also find on the title, media consumption. Another thing that I believe doesn't happen enough is people actually consuming stuff actively. I will go as far as to say something that I can state right now is in the realm of the symbolic significance of everything. Even the most mundane creations can possess some surprisingly and wonderfully useful revelations. But I guess the whole realm of the symbolic is in itself a different categorical side of the interpretation of reality. Not everything is unavoidably symbolic, but to be capable of grasping the multiplicity of symbolic explanations for anything is not something that anyone should, I guess, even aspire to do. It's sort of useless to know the thousand different ways in which you can interpret a good morning if you are not going to actually use it in any way. yourself. It's the accumulation of knowledge for the sake of accumulating that is not useful. But in itself, what I do think happens is there is a certain degree of consumption of media. Once again, I just limited this to media, but I do not think that it is active in the sense that I do not think that people understands in many cases that things possess messages. It's just things are entertaining and nothing else. And not because they actually are, but rather because we sort of adapted or become acceptant of a world in which nothing has to show to us that it has an actual message. If we do not get the message that something contains within that, it's far more acceptable for us to just keep on consuming that thing, even if we do not get it, than to actually try to care as to why it might be existing. It's media in itself. Let's say it like this: media is always useful. The problem is how much can the person who is consuming the media realize about the usefulness of the media which is being produced. In many cases, okay, this expression of do not cast pearl to swines end up applying in a more general sense because sadly, in many aspects of what I find out the average person to be doing, it happens that we try to create overly intricate and deeply meaningful ideas for people who are not even interested in searching for anything of that sort. As a general rule, or not once again, not just here. I think even music finds itself to be living within that realm. I I find it to be an interesting analysis in the case of oh wow yeah. I remember okay. An actually good example is this whole statement of reality isn't interesting. Reality is actually incredibly interesting. You just need to know where you should be looking at, how you can convert the potentially interesting aspects of reality into something actually interesting from that. Media is potentially interesting. Any kind of media could be potentially useful, but we have also somehow forgotten the necessity that we have in ourselves to find any usefulness in what we are doing, what we are consuming, what we are trying to go for. When that happens, when we find ourselves in that space under those conditions, unavoidably, we end up not having as much, once again, rapid developments in any aspects. I take interest to be a value judgment. Or are you saying interest to mean beneficial? No. Interest as in value judgment. Yeah. That more general sense of, oh yeah, are you interested in this stuff? Would you be more interested in this or that? You know, that expression of interest. Express actual interest, not in interest as in something that adds up, I guess. It's just the basic, let's say like this, wonder for the world, you know? Desire to know about this stuff. It's somehow what has happened with the average person is we find ourselves just passively receiving what is created in the different medias, in the different worlds, rather than to actively enjoy the process of consuming stuff, you know? I don't think that in itself media consumption needs to be something bad. Unavoidably, depending on the definition, it it isn't really media if it is actually informative. It isn't really media if it is particularly a movie or if it is particularly a song or a particular type of music or a particular type of structure of reading and whatnot. In the most broad sense, anything that is produced for the sake of entertaining someone else, that is the most basic way of defining media that we can utilize here. Okay, when talking about media like that, I think most media has a sort of value that only those who are interested in consuming it can perceive it. And in some cases, unavoidably, there is this more beautifully, even so, third layer that happens when you interpret anything. There is a the expected, the therefore predictable and desirable possible interpretations that this figure of the ideal reader can subtract, but there is this other side that also arises from the actual reader, the true reader of the media, the true consumer or receiver of the message does, in which my singular perspectives on the world, my personal experiences, makes it so that the message that I get out of what you are saying ends up being further modified, and I might get something completely new. You know, being a reductionist again, it sounds like a sort of stoic argument of too many people consume media with a purpose in mind instead of being open to new ideas, and thus they are missing the moment and more focused on how they are going to use this in a conversation in the future or something. I guess at that point it already has some differences. I think most people don't even consume that in an active way. Let's say this: you can just consume things with an objective in mind, or you can, for example, I think it is. I don't know if actually in places in America, for example, it is normal. In more well developed countries, that's the expression. It is as normal, but for example, here, what is normal is to see that people always have the TV running, the news channel running. That is a passive sort of consumption that you're performing for the sake of doing so. You're not actively listening to something, you just have it for the sake of having it. What I think happens in most cases is somehow uh, we do not understand the need to actively consume stuff, to actively seek out to consume things that we actually care about, that we have an interest on. It just happens that we consume whatever we are thrown into. Whatever is thrown into our face is what we are going to consume, and nothing else matters. This, I guess. Okay. In the modern world, for younger people like us, let's say, what happens is instead, oh wow, following the algorithm and following the endless scrolling, instead of actually watching something that you want, trying to hope that the next recommendation that you're going to get is going to still cater to your interests, That's where I'm trying to go. People forget that you can have an intention behind your need to entertain yourself. Entertainment doesn't need to just be something that allows you to not, I don't know, to not deal with not being entertained. Entertainment can be something fruitful in any way. That's to some degree, once again, that's why I was spending so much time saying this. Even when you're actually listening in order to gain something, that's wonderful. When you're listening in order to be capable of discussing, I don't know, what you saw in the news with your friends, it's it's nice, Kinda Nietzschean. I Kierkegaardian. I assume so. I mean, pessimist, or in which sense do you mean? I might not be actually following the comparison in this case, sorry. But I think the idea is in itself that, yeah, the consumption of a stuff can actually lead to results, you know? It's not something that you just do for the sake of it. It's you can surrender yourself to consuming stuff and nothing else, or you can actually seek out to consume things that you gain from something from when you consume them. You know, that's what I think could happen and doesn't happen as much nowadays. Unlike, I mean, yeah, that's I guess most philosophers to some degree are going to tell you that you should always be consuming, you should always be focusing on something. I don't know. You have a thousand different once again, philosophers, thinkers, poets that talk about that. You can also find the traces of that same idea on somebody like Bukowski, who tells you to, oh yeah, you know what, you shouldn't be spending your life on things that you don't care about. You should only be following those things that you actually want to do, and everything else is a waste of time. That might as well be the most exaggerated approach that you can take. You can also find it on somebody like Socrates, who goes and says that, oh wow, yeah, the person can understand the things from a more deeply and the proper manner. And once they do so, they can keep on doing those things that benefit not only them but everyone else the most. And that's what everyone should aspire to do. I think it's a general notion that gets expressed in many ways. That, yeah, we actually need to be, learning stuff. But in any way, benefits us. It doesn't need to just be consumption for the sake of consuming. It's, I mean, for a more contemporary example, I think it is Byung-Chul Han in terms of the societies of consumption and whatnot, with his whole elaboration of, oh yeah, we have these places in which the norm is to just consume and nothing else, and then to consume for the sake of consuming and whatnot. Yeah, yeah. He was a little more focused on like embrace self-reflection. Yeah, yeah. Confront your anxieties. Find out who you are. Don't avoid your authentic self. I mean, yeah. But as always, it's the illustration. The illustration is, I guess, or more so. Whether to some degree, I guess it's part of the discussion. It's an implicit message. Why are we not capable of actively consuming stuff? Why are we consuming media in a way in which it doesn't benefit us? Maybe there is an underlying cause, maybe there is an underlying issue that we need to try and address. Maybe if we do so, then we can finally arrive at a proper conclusion. Until we do not attack the problem, we will not solve the symptom. You know, that's sort of stuff that also comes in tandem. But sorry, my point is still trying to go back into it. I guess I know for the fifth time repeat that. It's interesting to see that, yeah, media consumption has nowadays even become so demonized as something so utterly wasteful, so useless. If you don't truly try to take an incredibly exclusionist approach of, oh wow, yeah, media is only what is produced in the big corpus, for example. Okay, unless you do something like that, you can find out that we talk about media in very weird ways. We say that, oh yeah, no, the media is contaminated by messages that are sort of harmful. I don't know, man. Once again, as always, I think that the best example is always spaces like this one still being able of existing. That's more than wonderful enough, and that's more than enough enablement of people like us. I don't think that if media in itself, as an institution, was such a bad place, we will be capable of taking out all of this stuff at all, you know? But I don't know. It's as always. These sort of discussions, I do not think the average person truly tries to have. It's just, I guess, the best definition is always they heard something said by uh, somebody who appeared to be an authority. I'm not even going to say an actual authority. Somebody who appeared to be an authority. And once they heard that, they said, "Oh wow, yeah, this is completely true." Media is the worst thing that you can consume. You only need to consume very informative stuff and not media. You don't need to participate in the media and media consumption and nothing of that sort. Social media are the most destructive thing for us because somebody once said, I don't know, brother. I think once again, more so if we are talking about somebody who tries to have any interest on philosophy, this fallacy of authority is very sort of obvious, you know, in that sense. Not everything matters so much because somebody said so. Once again, things can be useful, but we actually have to find the usefulness in those things themselves, ourselves. Otherwise, I don't think much of the world is going to be as nice or as enjoyable if we do not try to find it to be at all in itself enjoyable through our own actions. I don't think the world is going to one day articulate all the things that it has for us in store in such a way that we don't need at all to think about them and we are just going to be, what is the expression, put on the rails for the rest of our life and moved forward in one singular direction that is going to be the most entertaining one. I guess agency to some degree. That's also part of what I'm trying to say, I guess. But yeah, I don't think it's, once again, it's not that much of an actually elaborated discussion or point. It's just a simple thing in itself, I guess. It's a problem if you never try to consume something consciously, but otherwise it's not really bad. We, luckily, many of the issues that we can talk about can also, with just a little bit of effort, to be solved. So that's some degree why it sounds so funny to see how much we can try to keep on going over and over on the ideas. The solution is once again just, oh wow, yeah, tomorrow I am going to choose what I'm going to watch instead of just letting the randomness of internet lead my way. Maybe I have a better time. Maybe I can find out how I can have a better time, even if I don't actually do so. The moment in which I, for the first time ever, maybe even decide what I am going to consume, you know? But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, let me let me I guess that's it. That's it for the second topic. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's as much as I had thought about that one thing. I don't think I actually have. Do I have anything else to say about that? I Once again, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that media in itself is so much of an issue. I think that in many ways, yeah, that's something that maybe gets missed. Let me repeat that, I guess. Something very interesting is also, in many ways, the symbolical aspect and the whole field of possible interpretations of things that opens up once we slowly learn to interpret things more widely, more actively, is far more entertaining and enjoyable once we slowly give ourselves time to do so. I think, once again, in some capacity, even the most mundane things can be far more entertaining than what the actual creator intended them to be. Not because they have a new meaning in themselves, but rather because something funny that is human capacities. I learn about something, and I might be capable of using that knowledge in other areas of my life. I learn about something that I can also utilize to put that one idea in this course with this new other media that I am consuming, so that this media in itself becomes also more entertaining for me. That's why I'm trying to say the symbolic aspect is also a very meaningful one. I do not think it is also something so complicated. It's just, I don't know. I try to slowly approach things more directly, more willfully, instead of just stumbling upon things, being forced to consume something, being stuck at doing something because I just can't do that and nothing else. More focused? I guess so. I mean, in una way, a way of saying it is focused, being focused on what you are doing, or being aware of the actions that you take instead of just doing things out of the say or as a as an instinctual second nature of ours. I don't try to say that responding to life is bad. Unavoidably, there are times in which it is necessary to just respond to things coming to in our way, yeah. But it's not the only way in which we can live, you know? That's where I'm trying to go, I guess. But yeah, once again, more focused also. But yeah, that's now for real. That's all that I have to say about that. Um, Now we have I only have one final thing to talk about, guys, and that is this thing. There are three titles. Two are in the actual title of the stream. The other one is above me that says today colon activities full stop. Sorry. It says activities. Yeah. What what did I actually try to mean when I said activities? That's where we're going to. Um, I should probably get up. I don't know. And the only thing that I have is that it is incredibly, for some reason, humid. I fucking hate it. Sorry. Um, but going back. Activities. Why did I try to bring up activities? In which sense did I even try to bring them up? I think that the human has many activities that they can perform. Once again, a sort of dying or unifying concept based on the other two things that we talk about. I think that in some degree it's about purposefully doing stuff, performing the different activities of our day. I think And at the same time, that it also has to do with there are many other activities that we already do that do not come from anywhere else but from the past. We do not do things because we just decide to do them in many, many cases. We do them based and we take those decisions only when we take into consideration previous things. And I think, in a certain way, that it is. I think it is even maybe an exaggeration to some degree to say that it is sad to see the loss of agency over the different things that we do throughout our life, you know? When the person does not possess as much freedom to do the things that they want, not because they actually do not have it, or because, let's say, okay, I become aware of all my conditions as a human being, and I might not change the things that I actually do. I might not, I don't know, I have a family to sustain. I might become completely aware of all the things that led to that decision. Will I actually stop protecting my family, being that figure that also contributes to this family? Maybe not. But I am not saying that it is going to change. I am just trying to allude to the reality of, in many cases, I think it also happens that, once again, many of the parts of our life that we seem to so willingly participate in will benefit a lot more from us understanding why they are there. I think it's. I was thinking about it from this perspective. Something funny that I see happen is, sadly, we have many things integrated in the ways in which we live nowadays that are there, and we never question them, and not in a necessity to just question everything for the sake of doing so, but rather we can find out reasons, explanations, and more than sufficient enough motives for why things are the way in which they are, and for why we ourselves find ourselves being in the ways in which we are. Sadly, what happens is, I do not hear that almost anywhere. I think we have many similarly approaching to that one idea discourses that come not even just nowadays. They have existed since long ago. I think in in general, stuff like religions and such carries such messages in a way in which we find them to be repeated throughout time, and we find them to be perpetuated, albeit unavoidably with that extra layer of spirituality and that veil of the metaphors and whatnot. But in itself, we do not address it so directly because somehow something that appears, at least in the case of my analysis, just to keep it uh, contained within myself, let's say. In my analysis, I think that the most logical reason for not trying, in many cases, to think out the things that I do is that fear of realizing sometimes that the things that I do not matter at all. That I just do them because I am accustomed to do so. I don't know. One day I might judge the things that I do nowadays and realize that they possess no actual meaning. And the day in which that happens, I might lose the actual identity that I have, and I might risk alienating not only myself but also all the other surrounding things that are associated to me because I might not possess that capacity, you know? What do you meaning? What do you meaning means? What? 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 What do you mean? What do you mean? What do I mean means? Can I can I ask for a for another for another extra question? So or for a clarification of that question. Sorry. Yeah. You said, for example, maybe yeah, activity X has no meaning. Uh, I mean, what we were talking about earlier, no, things that came out of tradition. For example, the tradition and the performatic aspect of I don't know us having to always take so long when we say something instead of just rapidly expressing ourselves. That once again, I am just using it as an example. I don't mean that it actually is bad, but I am trying to say we can try to judge that and we can arrive at the conclusion, at the reality, at the realization of maybe it did not serve a purpose for us. Maybe we can get rid of this thing. But at the same time, there is this concept of I have also constructed a little bit of my identity on the things in which I am. I am. I actually didn't realize there is an. Damn. There is something along the lines of in one of the many ideas of psychology, I am there where I do not have to think or where I do not think. I am in many cases in the places in which I do not need to try at all to be cognizant about the stuff that happens. And once again, in this case, it is I have many activities. I might have many activities that I might have never actually stopped to analyze if they serve any purpose or not. Once again, for the sake of usefulness, for the sake of appearance, I guess there are thousands of things that I do every single day. I don't know, man. We have, for the sake of appearances, we have so many things like, oh yeah, I need to waste this money that I earn so that I can afford this particular brand. Does it actually serve a purpose, or I am just trying to justify this action for the sake of a different system that I never searched? That's what I'm trying to say. Some activities, some actions, some motivations do not actually come from a true place of interest, from a true place. Are all things purposeless? Also meaningless? Do you think? I wouldn't say that in itself, that which does not have a purpose is bad, uh, as in a sense of, I do not think, for example, because you can make a very easy slopey slope type of argument of, oh wow, yeah, I say automatically, yeah, it's true. That which is purposeless is meaningless. Therefore, the life of people who do not possess a purpose right now is meaningless. No, no, no. I can say that which does not possess a purpose can be modified into something that can, in the moment in which it gains the capacity to recognize that same purposelessness, then finally gain something which they can finally refer to as purpose. It's not so much of an eternal, I guess, seclusion into, oh yeah, this thing in itself, the moment in which it exists and has no reason to be, is bad. Therefore, we have to get rid of that. I guess it's things can slowly also transform. I can slowly, I think for me, they might be synonyms. Also, valueless. Yeah. It will make sense. I mean, we utilize way too many words in ways that make them look like synonyms, but not always are they, depending on the context, as always. But it's fine. The point is, I get the question. Don't worry, don't worry. It's fine. But yeah, once again, it's it's just that. I don't think that in itself the thing which is purposeless is bad. It's just that in many cases things happen. But if we do not try to understand why they happen, we will find ourselves later on, at a later stage of our existence, having to confront this question. And maybe the moment in which we try to do so, we're not just going to have to think about, I don't know, once again, the example that I used at first was, well, I have to buy this brand. For example, I have to buy this shampoo brand to keep my head clean. I have to buy this food brand to keep myself healthy. Maybe at some point it's not just about one brand, two brands. Maybe it is the whole integration of all the different brands that at some point became part of my identity. Maybe it is a bigger problem than what I can actually get to solve right now. That's where things get messy, I think so. And that's where things are risky to talk about. Because to some degree, it sounds easy to try to judge things so much. I guess that's the eternal I don't know, having continued to do the work uh, aspect of this discussion. Reductionist, of course. I think meaning and purpose is probably synonyms, and both are based on values and require values to make sense. But I think that's a controversial view. Mm. I mean, yeah, in a sense, it's sort of complicated to also possess values if they are not grounded in stuff like morality and whatnot. So, yeah, it's understandable that why it would be a controversial take, I guess. But it's not bad. Or it's not impossible to follow. But once again, it's just part of the process. It's fun. And yeah. I was trying to also say, and I don't know, I don't think it's actually all that bad. That sometimes we have to judge the things that we do. It's just that sometimes we get overly comfortable with all that we actually do without even trying to stop to look at what is it that we're actually doing. It's this lack of judgment. We like to judge everything else that is not ours, and when it comes to our own existence, it becomes so much of a complicated discussion in terms of so much opposition. I, once again, the easiest thing to always blame in that sense is even from oneself. I am not even willing to talk about the issues that I have. I am not even willing to talk about the things that I might need to solve. I can judge them on someone else so easily, but I might not be capable of doing so on my own self. I have activities that I know I need to change in that deeper side of myself, but I might not be even capable of reaching them consciously because it takes way too much discussion and too much struggle in my own self. And I guess uh, hinting at the solution doesn't always solve it. In some ways, that's also part of this wonderful reality of, you know what, it's fine to not think, no, brother. If you want to solve this sort of stuff, I guess you have to think. If you want to be capable of solving, yeah, I have activities that I actually don't like. I want to change them. Maybe it's slowly time to slowly get to think about them. You know, that whole aspect of, oh no, when I am in my own head, I am in the utmost suffering. I don't know, man. I don't think being so negative is always wrong. But yeah, I don't know. I guess let me drink some water. I will try to think what I might be forgetting. No, I don't think anything really. I think, as always, the most basic grounds were covered. I assume so. So, um, I feel satisfied with it. Thank you. No, yeah, I don't actually have that much more to say. So yeah, I think that will be it probably. Uh, I don't think there is actually that much more to add. So as always, I guess let us pass on to that other phase of as always. Thanks for being here. But yeah, I don't I don't believe we have that much more to add. I guess as always, I don't know. Thanks. No problem, no problem. It's the the pleasure is always mine to know that what I say doesn't actually matter in the void of existence. What matters is the usage that we get to give it from the other side, you know? That's what's far more valuable. So thanks for being there. Yeah. I don't know. I assume probably taking into consideration that things changed, I am most certainly or most probably going to be here tomorrow. I assume so. I have to organize myself in that sense still. But yeah, eh, things matter. It's, I would say it like this, the issue is, to some degree, the nihilism is found within the realization that nothing actually matters. We get to decide ourselves what matters. It is, I remember, to some degree, the way in which nihilists get to solve that reality is by sort of embracing absurdism. It's like the logical conclusion of anyone who finds themselves thinking in those nihilist ways that nothing matters, but at the same time, it's so absurd, the statement itself, that nothing matters, that, you know what, I actually get to also decide what matters once nothing itself is so valuable. That's where I find it to be an interesting statement. It's not actually, I guess, not so positive. It's just something that gets to sound good through, I guess, the different syllogisms. So more an absurdist? Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Don't worry. Anyways, um, like I said, yeah, probably here tomorrow. Something else. I don't know. There was a schedule. We're already on Friday, so I don't have that much more to add to that also. Um, Sunday, I don't know. I have to organize myself actually. But yeah, that's it from me. I don't know. Question mark. Right? Is there anyone easily readable right now? Uh, Directions, places, internet is a very wide array of. The easy answer is, you know what? We can let the other side decide by themselves. You go where you choose where you go. That's far more beautiful than me choosing for you. Exert your free will. Uh, that's that's my right choice. Your own free will. But anyways, yeah. As always, thanks for everything. It was a very good day. But yeah. Also, I have to say, it has gotten I'm very really fucking hot here, so good night. I need to fucking hate it here. Why is it so hot? Anyways, good night, good night, good night. Thanks for everything. Have a wonderful day. Sorry, hydrate, rest, be responsible. All of that. Good night.